Hello and welcome back to Parley. This prompt was written by vampbug. Hope you'll enjoy listening. It's a sequel to their previous Jumpstart related Parley for Magic the Gathering, Jumpstart 2, Singleton Rule. I stylized it a little myself, I hope you don't mind. Vampbug says, "Good day, Zandy. Let's look at more custom Jumpstart stuff today. I've completely reworked both the green packs from the previous Parley, and I do have a specific order for us to go in this time. So I'll just say that if you're interested in these and you would like to watch the previous one, you could go find it, sure. It is more about using Jumpstart as a way to play limited Magic the Gathering and the parameters you might use for that. I'm not going to talk about that too much in this Parley. If you want to follow along, basically the idea is just that these are kind of half decks, and then they'll all be put in a pile. All the half of a deck decks will be put in a pile. And then you'll get two, presumably of different colors, and they're designed to work well within other half decks in that set. So Vampbug's set is all themed around human-related synergy. Each of the packs has its own little theme, but they all have a lot of humans and a lot of human card synergy. So that's the idea. It's pretty cool. We're going to look at a few that you revised from last time, and also a few new ones. So that's the plan, pretty simple. You have a set order you want to go in, so we'll do that. You said first, take a look at both the new green packs. I'm quite happy having two human-specific cards and a modal dual-faced card land in each. I'm also trying to have two pieces of removal, one combat trick or piece of interaction, and one source of recovery, card draw or graveyard selection, in each pack to make being behind feel less bad and to keep the game interactive. I've achieved all that in these packs, I feel. Let's take a look. As before, we have a kind of janky way of doing that. Yeah, there we go. Great. So we have a pack. I actually forget which packs we saw before from green, but we have the two green packs, and they are pretty cool. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with these two personally. Let's just go over them quickly. I have a few notes. So the first theme is aristocrats, which that term generally means an archetype where creatures dying is good for the strategy. Green aristocrats. There's surprisingly good support for this. I guess it's because green has the morbid thing. Like part of green's design space is green-black, like decay leads to more life. And so I guess green has cards that care about when things die, sort of. And green also has a lot of cards that create multiple bodies. One thing I was worried about is that if you play an aristocrat strategy, usually you want a lot of stuff to die. You need to have a lot of cards in the deck or a good amount of engines that make a lot of creatures exist so that a lot of them can die. Now, a couple things are making that work here, I think. One is that the format is scaled down. It's not a gigantic creature war. Only a few things need to die, giving you the bonus for them dying only a few times, and this can be good without going insane. And then two is that, there is like really good support. I feel like I had another reason, maybe it'll come back. But there are surprisingly good support cards, and so you can fit them in. Of course, all the packs are pretty creature-based, and then the aristocrat strategy doesn't need to go as far in a format like this. So there's some really good cards. I want to just highlight a few that I thought were very cool very quick, but since there's not much to add to this, I won't spend too long here. Eternal Witness is glorious. It's so great that this is a human. I always misremembered this card as being an elf. She does kind of look like an elf, doesn't she? Anyway, this card is insane. I don't really remember seeing this card before. It's a 2/1 for 2 mana, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice a human. You don't have to tap it or anything, and you put a 1/1 counter on any creature. It doesn't even have to be this. This is the nuts. If you make people remove it, if you're popping off with this card and you make people kill it, it doesn't have to put the counters on itself. You can do it in response to stuff because it doesn't require tapping or anything. Your creatures get targeted for removal. You just sacrifice them in response. This is great. This is a good card. 2 mana is a little expensive, I guess, for that activation, but this is sick. I don't know why. It's from Dark Ascension, which I played a ton of, so I don't know why I didn't know about or think of this card before, but it's awesome. That's great. This is a pretty interesting card draw. This pack has another sub-theme of 1/1 counters. A lot of the cards that give you a payoff for creatures dying or you sacrificing creatures, like the aristocrats cards, like Deranged Outcast here, a lot of them give you the payoff in green by something getting bigger, like death leads to life, right? And so mostly it's 1/1 counters. And so what you've done that's pretty clever is that the pack has a lot of cards that also care about a 1/1 counter anyway. Like they just want 1/1 counters. This will give you drawing a card whenever a 1/1 counter is on a human you control. I think that this pack's power level might be deceptively high because this card, if you have it, makes a lot of the cards dramatically more powerful. For example, there's a little combat trick in here. Arbor Armament. It's a 1 mana instant. You put a 1/1 counter on a creature and they get reach until end of turn. Cool, simple, like relatively reasonable power combat trick. And a lot of the creatures in this pack have good toughness, so it doesn't need to make them that much bigger for them to effectively block flyers. But the thing is, if you have Cloaked Cadet, you draw a card as well when you do this, which makes it kind of overpowered in context. But I'm just saying I think it will make the pack swingy, whether or not you have this card. Cartouche of Strength doesn't give you a counter. I misremembered that. And I was a little bit, there might be something I'm missing with this. I guess it gives you, it gives you a source of trample, but you also get removal. But the pack also has like 2 or 3 bits of removal too, I guess. And good, like a good amount of sustain. I feel like this pack has too much sustain and card draw, or rather the cards for it are too good at that. And I think you did that because you're thinking that the player is going to want to buy a bunch of cards that give you more tokens, right? You're not going to be able to have enough things die unless the pack is structured around more recursion than normal, because otherwise you can't get back the few cards that fit the strategy, which also give you multiple bodies. So here's an example. Rural Recruit, there's a 4 mana 1/1, and it gives you a 3/1 boar token when it comes into play. So you get 2 bodies. Only one of them is a human, but go figure. And you could bring this back, and then you get 2 creatures every time. I think there was one other. You get lands from that. I could have sworn there was one more thing. But my biggest note about this pack is I think Gobbling Ooze, I want to urge you to reach for something more, like more humans. A card that gives you a human token at like a medium cost, or like 2 bodies at like a medium mana cost. I feel like this is a place where there's definitely a card that could fit this slot better. I don't think that another sacrifice payoff is entirely necessary, / they're already very good, I guess. Or rather, like, this pack is going to win if it gets one of these online, I think. So I don't know, I have some thoughts. Yeah, I thought this one was, I said I wasn't going to say much, but then I did. I think this pack might be a little powerful, but I think it works really well. It seems really elegant. Colony Ambush feels like a good fit for this pack. It gives you fighting at instant speed, which is cool. This pack can kind of reorganize the power level of the board a lot, and then suddenly something is fighting something you didn't know it would be. And at the same time, Colony Ambush is balanced by being, it's expensive. 3 mana for just a fight is very expensive. You can get it as cheap as 1 or 2. And of course, that's because it's a double-sided card with a land on the back. I think this is a good fit. Like, Colony Ambush is one of the better double-faced cards with a land on the back, in my opinion. But the effect is also, like, meaningfully weaker. It's like, no, straightforwardly, it's just 1 or 2 more mana expensive than normal. It's a pretty big tax. I think you picked a good pack to put it in, is what I'm saying. And if you have to play a larger creature and sacrifice stuff, and then you pay 3 mana, like, the cost matters. Like, that's a meaningful drawback in this pack. I think that's really cool. That's great. Okay, so the second one, this is called Howling. It is a super interesting, I also think this one is really clever, vampbug. It's a werewolf pack, but the theme is still kind of humans. Okay, so a lot of the werewolves are double-sided cards that are a human and then a werewolf. Well, a human and a werewolf and then a werewolf. Very clever. So you can have human synergy, particularly Mayor of Averbrook. This is the classic. It's a 1/1 for 2 that gives all other human creatures +1/+1. And then when it transforms, it's a werewolf, and it gives werewolves +1/+1 and wolves. So very nice. You get a human lord that buffs up all your humans, but then also you can add to the pack's werewolf synergy. Very efficient. Like this pack, this concept for a pack, has a lot of cards in it that are very, very efficient in terms of space, like getting the job done in only a few cards. The whole concept is awesome. The even weird stuff like exuberant wolf bear, 4/4 for 4. It can change the power and toughness of a human you control to 4/4 or whatever its power and toughness is until end of turn. So weird, but really cool. What the heck is this card doing in here? I thought, and then I went, oh, it's brilliant. Finally, Moon Mist. This says transform all humans. It's a 2-minute instant. So any humans that can be werewolves, they become werewolves. That's not a massive blowout in this pack, which is good because that could just you just win the game on the spot in some packs. Prevent all combat damage that we dealt this turn by creatures other than werewolves and wolves. So I love this because it's a human synergy card. But then the werewolf and wolf line only benefits this pack, but cleverly, most of the creatures are actually both humans and werewolves. Or like if they don't need to be transformed, they are a werewolf. Like they mild-mannered librarian, it becomes a werewolf. Super cool, like really, really cool. I personally think this is one of the better ones. This one made me want to do this myself. I want to make packs like this myself. This one is so clever in my opinion. Very, very cool. Bala Ged Recovery. I wanted to briefly talk about this. This is another interesting modal double-faced card with a land on the back. It's interesting because, you know, this is another one of the highest power level ones. It's very, very good to be able to get more or less Eternal Witness, but also with a land on the back. Like, that's very good. In strategies where the body is relevant, Eternal Witness is maybe a little bit better. In this pack, significantly better. But being able to basically pay the same cost, 1 less green mana too. You have 3 mana still, but not as much green. And you get the card back, and it's any card. A lot of cards like this say permanent, like only a permanent. This card is so good. I think that the benefit here is it's not particularly good in this pack. Like the power level of this card has been brought down a little bit in this pack, in my opinion. A lot of the werewolves are not that good unless you transform them or unless you buff them up. It's not terrible if you bring back Mild-Mannered Librarian, because when you invest in it again to make it big, you draw a card. But that's also 5 more mana. Well, actually, it's 8 mana to draw a card and get a 3/3. So I'm not saying that's terrible. I actually sort of like that. But my point is that this is a pack where the power level of this otherwise like kind of pushed card is brought down enough that I think it fits among these. Putting this one in here and then Colony Ambush in here and Eternal Witness in here is very, very clever. I just wanted to encourage you a little bit. I think that's really good. I thought those were really nice patterns of decision making. Hopefully talking about that a little bit will help when we get to talking about the other packs as vampbug continues on in the rest of the parlay. Trouble starts. Vampbug continues when we return to the giant pack now. I would really like to have a modal dual-faced card land in each pack, but the space here is specifically very tight. I've reworked the pack to give it a better early game instead, with more blockers and treasure generation, but Alright, so let's take a look. Here is this is the giant humans pack. The center point of this pack is Titan of Eternal Fire. Humans get to pay 1 red mana and tap to shoot a firebolt at something. Pretty cool, pretty interesting payoff card. And then you've got some giants that are just giants, like tutor for a giant, get Titan of Eternal Fire, or you have the option to go for something else. And then this pack also has a sub-theme of artifacts. This pack generally does it by making treasure. What's elegant here is that the treasure tokens can be used to ramp you into the more expensive giants, but then if you get them late, they are artifacts, and you can use them, you know, for anything that wants you to have an artifact. Improvise lets you tap artifacts to cast the spell more easily. It lets you use your treasure for mana without it being destroyed. You have some stuff like Sunshot Militia. You can tap 2 artifacts and not destroy them and do 1 damage to an opponent. Good. Cool. I think the treasure theme is quite elegant because this is one of the most expensive tribal synergy cards for a tribe that's usually cheap creatures that they've ever made. Like humans are usually 1 to 3 mana, and this is a 6 mana non-human that gives humans a benefit. That's like, it's very good, but it's not absolutely insane. Like, this is an expensive card, but it's really cool. So yeah, I think that's a good approach. There are some places where I think it isn't as good of an approach. I actually think the space in this pack isn't that tight. I think Inquisitive Puppet is not a good fit for this pack because it doesn't do the thing that the treasure tokens do, where they double as ramp, but then they're also adding an artifact to the board for the few artifact synergy things. And in the first place, we're going to get back to the artifact synergy thing in the Menace pack. Speaking of the Menace pack, Steamworks Brawler, I also don't think this is a very interesting or like good card in here. There's a lot of reasons. The one of them in context is that the next pack we're going to look at is Menace, and this is one of the few humans with Menace. So I would love to put that card in there. It has Improvise, but the Menace pack also has a lot of artifacts, and it's kind of doing something different with artifacts, which I think is cool, and it might be nice to lean into that. This card would be great in that other pack, and that other pack definitely needs it more than this, in my opinion. Another reason is that this is a 4 mana card. A lot of the giants are 5 and 6 mana. If you are getting to this, a turn or two early with a treasure token, I reckon that this pack nearly always wants to be casting a giant instead at that point. It's just kind of at a weird time. It's like how in a ramp strategy generally, it's often not as favorable to play cards that are like 3 or 4 mana because you often skip those turns by giving yourself some acceleration. Now, this is not a traditional ramp strategy, but I think that that will be a very effective way to play the pack, and you'll often repeat. Not having played it, obviously, I'm guesstimating a lot, but I would predict, because most of the cards that make treasure are floating around 3 mana, you're going to skip turn 4 or 5, or you're going to repeat like turn 5 or 6 in terms of mana, which means 4 is not a great mana cost anyway. Not the end of the world, but if we have another reason, maybe it would be nice somewhere else. I think that that helps put the nail in the coffin. So I don't really like this in here. I don't think Inquisitive Puppet is that good of a fit. Obviously, the point is that it's a human, what makes a human token, and it is an artifact before it makes a human. But it isn't doing both. Like, you have to not have the other one if you have one of them. And it's also not ramp, so it doesn't have that benefit. Though the scry, I guess the scry is kind of nice. You get some card selection. Da-ba-da-ba-da. I'm not the biggest fan in here. This is a cool card, of course. I just don't think this pack it actually does that much with it. Quick special note for Titan's Strength, actually. This is a nice combat trick. +3/+1 until end of turn, instant speed, 1 mana. It's like a very red giant growth. And then it gives you Scry 1. Just as an aside, Theros Block, where we had all of these, Theros Block did this thing where, I think this is originally from Theros Block, all of the cards would just have like a little bit of scry. When I propose, it makes like almost no sense from a flavor perspective, or like from a color pie perspective. Scry is a very weird effect for red to get. It's kind of charming that we actually have 2 scry sources in, or maybe more. I think just these 2 in this pack. But here I understand that it's meant to be like, this is Sisyphus, I guess. And the idea is that he's kind of looking ahead. The flavor text says 1 last push and then my task will be done. And it's like he's looking ahead to when it's going to be over, and not understanding that the past is going to repeat itself, I guess. Anyway, whatever, that doesn't matter at all. I think this is fine. Like, it kind of makes sense for the pack because you're card filtering a little bit. This pack is looking for some more key actors more than others. As much as the artifacts play double duty and you have ways to get Titan of Eternal Fire, being able to get a little less of those, you get Titan of Eternal Fire. All right, leave the other giants alone then. I need humans now. Or you get the treasure and you've got the artifacts. Okay, I don't need more of those now. So the scry is nice. And it's thematic, right? Like, it's I think you have this in there because it's thematic, and I think that's great. I did want to say, if you really need to move something around, I think this is one of the places where you can cut stuff. But I kind of like this in here too, and I suggested cutting 2 things, so I think it's fine. Grabby Giant, I want, just as a brief aside, I just think that this card is weak enough it's one of those cards where like it's either really bad or you win the game and your opponent can't do anything. You know, if the board stalls, you will probably win the game if you have this card. But every other time, it's really bad. I think it's pretty bad. The treasure token ability is weird. I guess mana fixing. I guess ramp. But just da 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 da. I don't know. I'm not really that against it, and it gives the deck reach. But I think this is another one to just keep an eye on. I get why you think it's hard to make cuts in this pack. You know, it's very tight on fulfilling 3-ish themes, kind of giants, treasure slash artifacts, and humans at the same time. Most of the packs have like a main gimmick and then a sub theme, and this pack kind of has 2 sub themes, sort of. And so that's challenging, or they kind of all have humans as a sub theme, but anyway, you get it. So I don't want you to feel like I'm saying, it's obvious that you cut these 4 cards or whatever. Not at all. That being said, I do think there are, from my perspective, clearly places where the pack is in a weaker spot. Just one last quick note. Exhibition Magician is an interesting one. Like, this is one of those cards where, in context, this might be strong enough, but it's a 2/1 for 3, and you get a treasure. So it's 2/1 for 2, but you can keep the artifact if you want, or mana fixing. And then you have the option to get the citizen. It's a real bummer that the citizen token isn't a human, isn't it? That at first I saw this and went, yes, that's so good, but it's so close. If this made a 1/1 human token, this would be the nuts in this pack. You get Titan of Eternal Fire and you get 2 human bodies for 3 mana in red, and a pretty good rate on stats, like total of 3/2 stats. Or you can use it to get the treasure. Like I was so excited when I saw this, but it's just, it's not quite there, I don't think. But I don't necessarily think you should cut it. I just thought it was interesting. Citizen tokens, come on. What are you doing over there? Okay, so let's finish the script of the parlay. Point number 3, vampbug continues. Going to the second red pack, this is going to be cycling humans with menace as the sub-theme. I have the space problem for a modal dual-face card land, but due to the theme that was chosen, I also have 2 little cards that fit at all. I would maybe like to make a version of this pack with 2 or 3 Drannith Stingers or Granite Golems, as those are the only creatures in red with both cycling and the human type or menace, respectively. Should I just pick a different theme for the red pack? Should I break the singleton rule? Should I have a modal dual face land in a pack with this much card selection due to all of them having cycling? Should I have more than 1 human synergy card per pack? It was possible for green, but weaving this many things together is quite tricky. Thanks in advance. Let's see what you got. Sure, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. So that it's a point where you're realizing combining this many themes is quite ambitious, and you're starting to question whether you want to give some of them up. I have 3 things that I would like to do to hopefully help. First of all, we can just look at the pack as it is. Second of all, we're going to look at all of the modal dual-faced cards that have a land on the back in red and talk about them. Third is going to be a discussion a little bit about modal dual-faced cards, but really about like keeping to a theme that you set for all of the packs, and whether you might consider breaking that / like how to keep the thing you like about keeping to the themes. Because this is for fun, like finding a way to embrace what you're liking about it without, making it a total mess or really frustrating to set up is really important. There's that point for everyone where fiddling with builds for stuff, which is very abstractly what we are doing here, becomes enough of a pain that they're having less fun than if they fiddled with it less rather than more fun. And that point is different for everyone and problematically like far away from the start of the process for the kind of person you all who are probably listening to this video. But I still think it's important to think about that. I've definitely occasionally run into that, and I find that being really interested in builds, you may relate to this, you may be unprepared, surprisingly unprepared for what to do when the build gets kind of out of hand. So I'm kind of learning too in that regard, but that's what this made me think of. This came at a good time for that. Let's look at the giant, the menace cycling pack that I wanted to put that 1 card with the thing in. Okay, So just right away, to finish the point from before, you can see very quickly right away that there are at least 3 cards in this pack that are artifacts, and there are a few more that will generate, like you get a treasure from Sticky Fingers, for example. So I again propose that this card is actually, this pack is actually really good for Steamworks Brawler. Yes, Sweatworks Brawler. This card is a very good fit here. It's a human with menace that has improvise. That is a much better fit in this pack than in the other one, I think. It's possible that you literally meant to put it in this pack and it's just a mistake too. But if it isn't, I recommend moving it. Let's just take a look at all the cards in this pack. I'm not going to go through every single detail of them in massive detail because vampbug knows what they are, but we can just talk about them a little. Okay, so the theme of the pack is cycling and kind of card selection and also menace. And there is also kind of an artifact sub-theme, but I think I know why. Anyway, we'll get to it. Okay, Abandoned Sarcophagus. It's a 3-mana artifact that lets you cast cards with cycling, except for lands, from your graveyard. And if a card with cycling would be put into your graveyard from anywhere and it wasn't cycled, you exile it instead. This card is a little weird to parse at first, but basically it means you can cycle your card and then cast it as a normal spell from the graveyard. But the card is asking you to do those two things in that order. So it's saying you can't cast the card first. You have to cycle first, but then when it's in your graveyard, you can just cast it. The other good thing about this card is that you can use it as like kind of pseudo card advantage late. You have a lot of cards that you cycled or played normally, whatever, just in your graveyard. And then you play this and you can suddenly use all of them again. It doesn't like prevent you from using the ones you had cast as a normal spell before. Very powerful card that helps this theme be strong because the actual cycling cards that are available in this particular environment are not that good. So I think this makes sense. It does happen to be an artifact. A human that has +2 when it attacks. This is basically a 3/2 when it's attacking. I think the idea with this is that it's a target to give menace. It's meant to be a target for menace. I wanted something stronger here, but it might have been hard to find something that was a human. Draenith's Singer. When you cycle, you ping your opponent. And it can also cycle for 1, which can be pretty powerful. If you have Abandoned Sarcophagus, you get to pay 1 and draw a card, and then still play it for 2 mana. Pretty aggressive rate, even without the cycling payoff. What I'm worried about if you add more Draenith Stinger copies, we're going to talk about adding duplicates of cards in a minute, but what I'm worried about if you add multiple of these is it's actually really good in the context of this pack overall, because it's kind of good even if you don't cycle cards around it. It's not a terrible rate for a body. It's a 2/2 for 2. And the cycling is really cheap. So when you're doing something that makes it good to cycle, this card is nuts. It's fortunately a human as well. Very nice. Flameblade Adept, a super aggro cycling card. It's a 1/2 with menace for 1 mana. And when you cycle or discard, very nice, it gets 1 power. No limit on how often it can trigger during a turn. Big damage. Yeah, this is really cool. The trick with this is you attack, you cycle 1 thing, your opponent thinks that's all you got, it's a 2/2 or whatever, and then they double block it because it's got menace, and then you cycle way more things and you get a double kill or something like that. Badass. Now, unfortunately, it's not a human, it's a warrior. I recall, let me look at this card. That's a warrior as well. Okay, anyway. Granitic Titan. What the heck is granitic? All words are made up, I guess. This is a 5/4 with menace and cycling. Yeah, this is the card where you see that the theme is a bit of a struggle. It's hard to get enough cards that feel on theme, that are good at all. Even in the context of this format, I feel like the removal is good enough in these packs that this is not a good card. It's a 5/4 with menace, which sounds scary. But all the packs we've looked at so far, I feel like I can easily see myself killing this card, you know what I mean, for less than 6 mana as well. Maybe for 2 cards, but like for a tempo gain at the very least. So that's tricky. Now you could build the pack around Granitic Titans, I suppose. You could build the pack around Draenith Stingers and maybe cut Abandoned Sarcophagus. that's by the by. We'll keep going for now. Harvest Hand, this is a 2/2 for 3. When it dies, it becomes an equipment that gives humans menace, as well as giving 1/1 to whoever. Very elegant. You get an artifact, which I'm proposing you focus this back on artifacts, or like maybe even metalcraft a little more. And it has specific human synergy and gives menace all in one. This is one of those cards that, vampbug, I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth when I say makes the whole exercise kind of worthwhile. This card is so weird in general Magic, but it is such a deliciously perfect fit in this. It's like, oh, so good. It's such a nice feeling to have found like a good home for this card. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, that's very cool. Lava Serpent. This is a haste and cycling dude. Again, I think that this is the place where you can see that the pack is being forced to pick too many cards that don't do more than one theme at a time. This card does cycling, but a good amount of the pack actually doesn't do cycling. It's payoffs for cycling. And it doesn't have a relevant creature type. In the first place, we can see that part of the problem is actually that cycling is kind of like a two-stage ability. You've got to have cards to cycle, and then cards that give you a payoff for cycling. Sometimes you get both, but of course you can't do them both at the same time unless you have Abandoned Sarcophagus. So Drannith Stinger, while it is a card with cycling and a payoff for cycling, it won't be both of those at once. It still helps. It means your payoffs for cycling still get another payoff for cycling and a cycling card all in one. But there are very few cards that do that, which further lends credence to the idea that maybe multiple Drannith Stingers is the solution. I do not think that multiple Granitic Titans is the solution for the same reason. I think that the problem is ultimately that there aren't enough cards that are multitasking, and this card kind of doesn't. Like it has Menace, but the pack doesn't have a lot of synergy with Menace. It doesn't need to turn Menace on. So I feel like it's better to have as a sub-theme. In the first place, a few of the ways the pack grants Menace are like equipables. You know, you just put them on a creature. So having a great target for Menace already have Menace is arguably kind of awkward, like sort of bad. It does have cycling though. I almost prefer Lava Serpent in that case, right? It's got haste and cycling instead, but I would remove both of these. Okay, this is the one where we really get into, Sonorous Howlbonder. This is a human with Menace, 2/2 for 3. And it makes it so Menace means you have to triple block instead of double block. Very cool ability. However, it does break a theme up until now that the packs can have other colors in them, sort of. You know, it's a red card, but it does have black hybrid mana. We're going to get back to that in just a minute. We're just going to look through the other cards. Removal with cycling. Yep. A sort of battle cry ability with cycling. Yep. Removal with cycling. Yeah, again, this is really good. Like if you get Abandoned Sarcophagus and you have a decent amount of mana, this is unbeatable compared to the other packs. You get a huge amount of removal relative to the other strategies with burn that doesn't cost you cards. Like you can rifle through the deck. I can see why you didn't want to do a modal double face card in here with a land. Forgotten Cave, you even have a special land that has cycling for 1. Very, very nice little payoff. If you draw an extra land. And then Sticky Fingers. This is a little weird in that it's basically just Menace and it replaces itself. I also think this is a relatively high power card. Sticky Fingers doesn't cost a card because when the creature dies, you draw a card. It usually doesn't cost a card, and it doesn't cost mana if you hit the opponent once. So you just get Menace. In a cosmic sense, we all have Menace. You get to just say a creature has Menace. In theory, this card is kind of busted, in my opinion, and that will be more true the lower power the format is, which this is, right? It's not really going to get destroyed. The creature is going to die. So I think this is very powerful. And of course, the Menace enables making the treasure. I don't think that's bad necessarily. If the pack is kind of janky, you give it like a little power boost. And I do also think, though, it's even more of a reason to make Menace a sub-theme, more of a sub-theme, because you can see that most of the cards that like it's not like anything just has menace. Very few of the creatures that are on theme in other ways just have the menace. I feel like it's better to have that be a way the pack pushes damage while cycling cards. And in the first place, you don't need that many payoffs because you have a bunch of cycling, sure. So I don't think it's that bad, but I think that eliminating some of the cards that are only doing one theme and also making more of a commitment to humans was my main thing, I guess. Felt like a direction that would fulfill what seems like your design goals. So, of course, we're going to end the parlay by talking about those design goals, right? Like, I would say if you've looked at these 4 packs, probably a lot of the audience is thinking, yeah, this is less well defined than the other ones. It's like a more awkward pack, right? Sure. But vampbug, you probably kept this one because there's something about it that you love. You know, you love the menace becomes 3 or more creatures, or you love the harvest hand, you scythe thing, or Drannith Stinger is a really beautiful fit, but the rest of the pack is like very difficult to find fits for. The removal is like weirdly very good. It's extreme. There's very good non-creature cycling stuff, like instant stuff, basically. That's strangely good. Like this is some of the best non-creature stuff in all of these packs so far. So whatever it is, whatever the reason that you're keeping this pack in, even though you're having more trouble with it and you feel like it's kind of awkward or out of place, I think it's good to embrace that thing. Now, I can't know what it is, of course, so I might say, like, to me, the thing that's the most awkward is the Howlbonder being hybrid mana. To me, that's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and I just can't. It's gotta be all red, like, and artifacts, I guess. For me, that's what it is. And I also just don't, I think that's one of those cards that this could be really good in the right deck or format, but I think it actually won't be very strong in this pack because one, the menace is already pretty good in a format with, you know, smaller scale stuff going on. If you get something that is scary to double block, it's going to be scary to double block. And 2, there's not actually that much menace, so it's not going to pay off that much stuff. And finally, 3, the pack actually has a lot of removal, so I'm not sure that you're actually going to need... They're not going to have 2 blockers, I think, when things are going well. Maybe. I don't know, that's just how I feel. And again, it's the hybrid mana thing. I'm trying to rationalize with myself because I want to cut it. Why isn't it going to be fun? Because then if I can make a story for myself like it's not going to be fun, then I'll feel more comfortable killing my darlings and removing it. That's kind of my... I'm in too deep with the build system. Help me. You know, what do I do? But to help with resolving that stuff, again, one of the things I want to do is talk about sticking to themes for all the packs. And the other thing I want to do is look at all of the modal double face cards in red that have a land on the back. You did put a maybe board in this parlay. I'm not going to show it on the screen because it's contrived for me to only talk about a few things to show. But I noticed you put Valakut Awakening as a modal double-faced land for the Giants, for the Menace pack. Probably because some of the things, I think only Flameblade Adept actually, trigger when you discard a card, and that would trigger that as well. So let's right now look at, let's do that first. We're going to look at all of the modal double face cards with a land on the back in red. So we'll set it to red only, and we're going to go criteria is modal double faced, and we're going to say the type line has to include a land and allow partial matches. And there they are. There are 6. I really wish they would make more of these because they're amazing, in my opinion. I love the modal double face cards, as you all are keenly aware. I need to make this a little smaller so we have room. There we are. There they are. So we only have a few options, as you can see. Let's take a gander. Let's just evaluate all of them. It's not going to take very long. We have the one that you recommended, Valakut Awakening. Can I get this in a good position? Sort of. This'll do. It's a 3-mana instant. You put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then you draw that many +1. I misremembered. This does not trigger that one cycling and discard card. This is just like a powerful card cycling card. You could maybe put this card in the giant pack in place of the giant that tutors for giants as a way to give that pack better card selection and a modal double-faced card. And it more or less helps you find Titan of Eternal Fire, but it's also more general. This is, also a pretty good card. This is another one of the modal double-faced cards that's pretty pushed. It's you do gain a card, or this replaces itself when you cast the spell. And it's quite variable. You can recycle however many cards you want. It's an instant, which is a kind of very advantageous for this kind of thing. You can do it whenever you have a free moment in your mana curve. Pretty nice. And then you have the option to play the land on the back. That's not where I want to go. So very good. I maybe in the Giants pack. Okay, let's talk about Shatterskull Smashing next, I think. This is a burn spell, basically. Sorcery speed, you pay X. It's divided as you choose, and you can divide it among up to 2 targets. You can't hit players with this spell. I think that makes this kind of a good type of X spell for a limited environment, because you can't just explode your opponent at the end of the game. Yeah, I mean, if you don't want that kind of environment. This is also one of the strong type of modal double-faced lands where you can have it come into play untapped, which the Menace and Cycling pack kind of wants, but it's also burn, which that pack already has a good amount, like a little bit too much maybe removal. Maybe this is, again, another better candidate for the Giant and Human pack. Kazul's Fury. Interesting. This lets you basically throw a creature at your opponent. 3 mana, and as an instant, 3 mana is only 1 more than it normally is as an instant, and then it's a weaker modal double-faced land. I think this is good with Menace. You can throw the creature for extra damage after it gets through. If your cycling engine gets destroyed, you can throw it at someone or whatever. I don't know, the Giants pack, like, it's sort of thematic. Not a giant, I know. Kazul is a Minotaur, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I don't know. I still think this is sort of nice. And I think this is a relatively good card. But it is like burn their face, which maybe you don't want in this environment. I'm not going to talk about Akum Warrior here. This is a 4/5 with Trample Minotaur Warrior for 6. You could do a Warrior sub-theme in the Menace Cycling pack, but that would just make things even more difficult. Because, anyway. So we're going to talk about the remaining 2, which may be where you go with the Menace and Cycling pack. So we have Spike Field Hazard. I love this card. Ping anything for instant speed, 1 mana. And if you destroy a permanent after dealing damage to it, that way it gets exiled. That basically doesn't do anything most of the time in this format, but there might be a few things where they get a body or something when the creature dies. 1 damage kills a lot of the stuff we looked at today. So I think this is kind of good, and it would do a good thing for the Menace and Cycling pack in that it's small removal. It would actually do that for the Giants and Humans pack too. Finally, Song Mad Treachery. Mind Control for 5. This is a tricky one. I think that this is a strong effect that is often actually kind of undercosted. And it's one of those effects that it's good to have it be a modal double-faced card because it's only good when it's good, but when it's good, it's really good. So having it be a more versatile card, I think, adds a lot of power to this type of spell. And perhaps the designers know that because as a consequence, it's a lot more expensive than this effect normally is. Maybe that makes it an interesting fit for the Menace and Cycling pack. I don't see why this would be that good for the Giants and Humans pack, personally. One very cute thing about this card in your format is that you're going to mind control a human, which, your stuff has synergy with humans. Very nice. Now, 5 mana to mind control most of the humans we looked at today is hilariously overpriced. But what are you going to do? I think it's kind of cool, that's all. Now, we went through all of those, and hopefully it gave you some options or whatever, but what you noticed is that the reason it was hard to add one to this pack was primarily because, or for me, it was because I kept saying the pack already has a like too much, or it feels like too much removal. Now it kind of doesn't, it's only 2, but you do also have the pump spell. Like you have a more combat tricks is I guess what was on my mind than the other packs. So that is my takeaway for you, is that the thing I would target is if the core issue for adding a modal double face card is there are good ones, but they're mostly good as being removal, and this pack already has pretty good removal or like interaction in general. How do you feel about that? You could go from there. Maybe you just remove one of them, even though they're good cycling fits. Maybe you go more for the artifact metalcraft thing, whatever it is. I don't know. It's a shame how they all felt like they fit the Giant and Humans pack better. What I want to finish with is a little bit of a discussion about keeping to themes and like the purpose of the modal double face cards in the first place. I feel kind of bad, right? I sort of infected you with the obsession with modal double faced cards, I feel like. And so I want to talk about that a little bit, take some responsibility. And it will segue into a final discussion about keeping to a theme and how maybe you could, I said it before, you know what I mean. So the main point here is that the modal double face cards are there in principle, or I think they're nice in principle, because they allow the pack to change the number of lands that are inside of it without knowing what pack it's going to be paired with. The question for this segment is, when do you actually want that? You could put them in all the packs, but let's say you didn't. You could put them only in the slow and fast packs. Packs that are of a medium speed or tempo don't get them because they just have the right amount of land. The slow and the fast packs, well, if they're paired with a pack that has a different speed, they can kind of adapt a little bit. Or, well, if you're going to do it that way, the slow and the fast packs know what speed they want to be. So shouldn't the medium packs be able to adapt? Maybe you only put the modal double face cards in the medium packs. Or you go even further, like you said, you don't put them in packs that have the card selection. The cycling pack has a lot of cycling. It's even got a cycling land, which pretty much accomplishes the same goal. So since this pack has a way to accomplish the goal, you just don't worry about it. That would be a way you could go. So what I'm suggesting is that maybe you will feel better upchucking the theme a little if it still keeps to the spirit of the theme, like you've still done in a clever way, and you have, I think, in a very clever way, kind of fulfilled design goals for each of these packs. If you keep to the idea of the theme, but you just fulfill it in the way that pack is doing the thing. You know, this pack's version of assuring that you don't get mana screwed or adapting to the amount of lands you need or whatever is cycling, not the modal double face cards. The modal double face cards are there for strategies that don't have a way to adapt to that. You could think of it that way. I think, for example, of the packs that we looked at today, the Aristocrats pack and the Giant Humans pack need this like more, maybe. The Howling pack, I guess, it's debatable whether that or the Aristocrats one needs it more. Maybe the Howling pack wants it more. There are the relatively least card selection cards in the Howling pack and the Giant Humans pack relative to the other ones, you could say. I think, anyway. And the Aristocrats pack has this whole theme of returning cards from your graveyard to your hand. And so maybe that's that pack's flavor of the card selection to help you adapt. Stuff like that. That's what I think. Whereas the packs that really want it, the Howling pack maybe, and then the Giant Humans pack I mentioned before, you could remove Giant Harbinger and put in a modal double face card instead, because you're kind of getting, Valakut Awakening or whatever. You're kind of getting the card selection as well, but the Giant isn't on theme as much as it would be on theme if a card, like if it let you get Giants and Humans, which is kind of what Valakut Awakening does. I sort of like Giant Harbinger. I like this pack because it's like you get to do the tribal Giants thing and the tribal Humans thing at the same time. Very cool. I'm not saying it's bad to do that, but I think it's a place where you could add them in if you want. And the Giant Humans pack is kind of lacking a little bit more card selection. There is Seize the Spoils. Anyway, you get it. So that's what I would do. I would consider not having them in every pack because I think a lot of these strategies actually have their own route to achieving the card selection. You may be able to achieve some kind of, oh my goodness, I don't know if anybody cares about this. I don't care if anybody knows about this about me, but I'm the kind of person where I want, okay, so let's say there are 2 packs of each color. One of the 2 packs in each color has a modal double face card. Like, it somehow, to me, that saves it. It's like it's a pattern within the I broke the pattern, but now I have a new stupider pattern. I don't know. I resonate with that kind of thing, so I don't know what to tell you. I guess my point is that I think these things are important. I think that when you play with the packs, making them functional is obviously really important. Having them be fun is really important. But letting yourself say, it's important to me that I follow this rule I made for myself because that's what's fun about building them. And when I see those themes in the pack, it will be satisfying to have fulfilled it in that way. And that's an experience I will carry with me. That is not silly or lesser to the experience of like directly having fun with the packs. I think it's good to treat it as equal. I have a lot of respect for that. I think it's good to validate people caring about the things they care about. You could just buy Jumpstart packs, but you're making them yourself because you want them to be a certain way. You said thank you for taking a look. Thank you for asking for this parlay. It's been a lot of fun. These really are hitting at a nice time for me too. I told you had very good timing. This one, it's with dealing with analysis paralysis, preventing me from actually having fun. For me, in Baldur's Gate 3 is where that's happening. Or I'm working on a video, but it's not that it's not going well. It's more like I'm just overthinking it because I want it to be just so, but nobody, including me, cares if it's just so. And so what like, who cares? It's fine. But this is not necessarily like that. You know, I discovered it wasn't what was important to me, and I was having fun just playing, but I felt like I was doing something wrong. I think if you're trying to keep one of the packs in, but you feel like you're doing something wrong by doing that, by breaking the pattern, I'm more here to say, maybe not. Like, you do, if that's important to you, whatever's important to you about the Menace pack, yeah, keep it in, I think. I guess the final thing I would say is that if you're going to embrace the pack does its own version of the modal dual face thing, I would put more in if you can. For example, in the Menace pack, I know that there is a card that is Forgotten Cave, except the cycling cost is 2 generic mana instead of 1 red mana, and I would put that card in the deck. It does slow it down because you have 3 tapped lands, but this is not going to be a fast pack anyway. And then you could add something to the early game if you really needed to, but yeah. I didn't end up talking much more about duplicates, and I guess the reason is that I feel like that it's not that it's bad at all. You could have it be that what some of the packs are doing is they have duplicates and others really don't. If they really need it, that's fine, that's something. Having them all have their own unique feeling is cool. Like, I think that's part of why it's fun to make your own custom packs. But to me, it feels like the duplicates thing, it may remove some of the challenge a little bit, and if you feel like you need to do that, it may be more fun to see if you could like give up on some other aspect of theme but still have the experience of fitting everything together quite compactly and having this interconnected synergy thing. I think that is somehow more satisfying that way. That's why I didn't talk about duplicates more. But kill your darlings. I don't think it's bad to decide that a pack is more defined by that. And it creates kind of an interesting quandary, right? I can imagine having fun playing the pack that has 4 Dranith Stingers in it, but then a little less other cycling support, and you have to decide how to manage that. Could be cool. Anyway, thank you for the parlay. Looking forward to more. Talk to you soon.